All right. So thanks for everybody that's here and joining. We certainly do appreciate it. My name is Erik Severinghaus. I'm here with my good friends Bill and Andrew, and we're all from Bloomfilter. So we're about half the executive team at Bloomfilter. We'll get to the introductory slides here in just a second. But what we really wanted to do was kind of create a conversation around the process of Agile. And how we think Agile is or isn't working. I think Agile has been a thing. Bill, you're more of an Agile historian than I am, or Andrew. I think Agile has probably been a thing for like 10 to 15 years. It's probably become industry standard in a way that is almost unassailable over the last probably 5 to 7 in just kind of my rough reckoning. And so I think we are interested in catalyzing a conversation here around what we think Agile is doing well, where we think there's opportunity for improvement as the product leaders in this audience think about what Agile means to them and their job. So we're going to get into a few really specific call outs around the process of Agile. And I have two of my most opinionated friends here in terms of Bill and Andrew, and I know that this is going to be a lively and interesting conversation. So with that, I'll just introduce myself, Erik Severinghaus, co-founder, co-CEO of Bloomfilter. Been building software products in some way, shape, or form for about 20 years. I mostly do more go-to-market stuff, although I have a little bit of a technical background. And with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew.
Yep, Andrew Wolfe, co-CEO, co-founder of Bloomfilter. Like Erik, have spent a lot of time in software, but on the technical side as an engineer, and then a technical leader as a CTO.
Hey everybody, Bill Holman.
Shaven guy there, Bill.
Yeah, how about that? Summer look. Product guy, Bill Holman. I, as you can see there, have done this framework at a number of different institutions for a number of different audiences. And I was introduced to Agile roughly the same time I was introduced to .NET, to give you a sense of how far back I go with.
Wait, which .NET version, Bill?
Well, we were patting ourselves on our back at the time that it was the pre-release version of it, that they were using us to sort out the rest of it as a trusted partner.
So you're using libraries for that?
Yes.
We're testing in prod with Progressive Insurance.
Right. That's right.
If you guys find any of this particularly interesting or just good looking or want to talk more with us, we included little QR codes there on the slide as well. So you're welcome to scan that, and you can get all of our contact information if there's more conversation that you want to have. All right, so there are kind of 3 key topics that we want to focus on as we think about this subject area. The first is around sort of the broader concept of alignment, autonomy, how we think of product and how we think of it as it relates, and Agile in particular, as it relates to the business. For each of our concepts here, I added what I think are some fun little cartoons from these guys at Work Chronicles that I recently discovered. And so, you know, Andrew, there was a talk that was given in the last Product Collective conference, and I think it's even being replayed in this one. And it sort of focuses on the idea of over-processed. And it focuses on this idea that that we kill the creativity of software development teams when we ask them to do things like align to business metrics or focus on a process around software development. And I'm just curious, we talk about this a lot within Bloomfilter. I've heard you talk about it on your podcast and other places. I'm curious sort of how you think about the balance that product teams, software development teams, product leaders need to strike between having the autonomy to go, make decisions, but then also figuring out how do you stay aligned with the business and the business goals.
Yeah, I think, going back to first principles here on consistency versus creativity, that tends to be the area here, right? Whether you have a highly hierarchical structure as an organization that gets consistency for its customers, or you're completely flat, have a holacracy, if you will, that maximizes creativity. And ultimately, when we talk about what the organization should do, it should look at its goals, right? I have a hard time believing any business goals is free range developers anything more than a goal would be to get the most consistent but worst software out there. Right? I'm sure there are businesses that achieve both, but when we talk about, I think, this autonomy question, I think it's from an age of agile overcorrection. Right, we had this waterfall process that wasn't delivering results. You couldn't answer the 3 core questions. What are you going to get? When are you going to get? And how much it's going to cost? You had scope creep. You couldn't adjust to the risks the business was doing. You couldn't adjust to the market. And so people looked at Agile and said, this sounds way better than what we were doing. And I think the market overcorrected a bit. They pushed too much autonomy down, and they lost the consistency that they had before. And you can see some of the current trends of like SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework, and other methodologies arising to kind of correct back towards the middle of saying, okay, yes, we need to maximize creativity, but if you're building line of business software that's just integrating Oracle to Salesforce, you don't need a lot of creativity there. In fact, you might not want it at all. You may want to have a pretty rigid structure. I think you're going to see that correction back towards the middle, where people lose some autonomy, but through losing that autonomy, they create consistency, and you have much better requirements and understanding what your day-to-day job is, which I think is also one of the problem with burnout in our field is everyone can do anything, so therefore nothing really happens. People just keep churning on work forever because there's just this endless death march of more features, more features, more features, where if there's more consistency and alignment, people wouldn't have to do that because you would know this is the business objective we're going to get. This is what we're working on to get that business objective done, and this is what we're going to do to get that. Here's our thesis for reducing churn or increasing our TAM or whatever the business alignment happens to be. Bill, I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I'll just sprinkle onto that. If you choose to run from process or not do process as part of your autonomy, that's a process in and of itself, right? There is no escaping the fact that every choice you make about whether you do or don't participate in a methodology or a framework, that is a choice towards a process that you are laying out. And I think autonomy has lost a little bit of meaning. Matt LeMay had a great line this morning in the presentation that we share on the main stage, that people participating in systems make those systems healthier. And that's spectacular on a couple of fronts, but the one I really want to focus in on is if you're going to try to strike that perfect balance of autonomy, to do it from the framework of, we want to give you some leeway because you are the closest right now to our customer. Really listening to the customer and bringing that back in. And appreciating that the autonomy that we're giving you is the fact that we are respecting the fact that what you bring to this system is your firsthand knowledge of the customer that you're trying to satisfy there. And what I, as a leader, am bringing to this is a perspective on this that helps us all remind ourselves of what the rocks are that we're trying to push up the mountain, and together through the collaboration, when your autonomy expands and collapses back into the conversation with those around you, the teams that you need to get it done, or to help me push this rock up the hill, that we have that understanding kind of in place for us as we move forward.
I think one of the things that gets missed, and I think you guys were both touching on this, but the less structure that you have for the development team, the less there is in terms of structure and predictability, the more of the onus then gets laid on communication. Because if people aren't going to be told more specifically what to do, then they have to be really, really well communicated with in order to make sure that they stay in alignment. I think sometimes we miss that as a business. We miss that if we're going to reduce the structure, that's okay. But we've got to overinvest in the communication and the alignment so that they ultimately know how to create business value.
Well, and then you get into the actual world of systems are more complex than they've ever been. There's multiple moving parts. Very rarely on a non-trivial product, you have a singular team working on the product. And then without the process to make sure those teams and efforts align, the communication barrier becomes nearly impossible to make sure you get it right. And some companies have gone as far as to say, if you don't have an API that's well documented, like the famous Bezos email from like 20 years ago of him, like, if you don't have an API, I'm going to fire you. Like, just absolute insanity, but that's how they manage to deal with it. There's different architectural approaches to it. But again, you're using architecture to overcome a business process issue, which, can work, but very rarely ever does.
Yeah, so I want to switch gears here. We got 9 minutes left. I want to, we talked a little bit about alignment and how we think about that in autonomy. I want to think a little bit about predictability. And, business doesn't run on Agile, right? My finance reports to my board certainly aren't done over 2-week horizons where I get to readjust my budget every 2 weeks. And at the same time, product teams, we've clearly shown that multi-year development cycles don't work very well. It with waterfall, it ultimately leads to this tension between the need for business predictability and the need for product agility. And Bill, I'm curious, you've been at publicly traded companies, you've been at large companies, you've held product leadership roles in a variety of different organizations. I'm curious, how do you think about balancing the need for product agility and responsiveness to the market with the fact that somewhere you got to make commitments that ultimately get bubbled up to a board of directors, probably on a multi-quarter or multi-year basis?
Yeah, that is a tricky one, what Agile helps bring to that. What I've appreciated about that is the time structure at a minimum that it is introduced into helping to solve for that. I've tried a number of prioritization techniques with stakeholders, with business people. Anybody who's worked with me in the past knows that the users are always going to be a part of it, and I'm always going to be bringing that piece of it in. That's just my background. That's how I got to the product roles that I was in. But striking that balance is a fine art, and it's a pendulum that swings back and forth. And if you can look at it in terms of a framework like Agile to help you do quarterly planning through something like a PI or an incremental conversation, and using discovery in front of that to put the group in a position to have a conversation about seeing that balance for themselves. But what do we need? And really, it's 3 parts. It's not just the business versus the customer, but also is the technology keeping up? Are we at a place where we got to kind of burp this thing to grow? Do our customers, have they reached a part where we don't see the wow anymore? We're just kind of keeping up with the Joneses. Is there something in our discovery that we can bring into those incremental conversations? Something that is also near and dear to my heart is understanding the difference between a leading indicator, which is the things that you should be working in for your customers, and understanding the behaviors that they're demonstrating in the interactions with you, and the lagging measures of that, the results, the outcomes, the reasons for being in business or being healthy in business anyway. And I think a fantastic way to tie those two together is to help each party see how behaviors, leading indicators, lead to those financial outcomes or satisfaction results that we're always after. We all want the 85 NPS for sure. No one more than myself. But to get there, there's probably some behavior hoops that you have to jump, and using a framework can help you kind of stay on that course.
Andrew, we got 2 minutes for this question because I don't want to miss efficiency. So I'd love to get your thoughts on predictability here.
It's really interesting. One of the predictability things that's interesting to me anyways is that if you look at the outcomes versus the output, we've all agreed that that's the way you should measure software. But if you look at every way we measure software, it's all output metrics. What's your velocity? What's your throughput? What's your lead time? What's your reaction time? What's your cycle time? Right? And we're looking at that, and those are output metrics. There's nothing measuring the outcomes that are happening, and are you predictably creating the outcomes that you want? And I think that's part of the reason you have these problems is your metrics that you're using to measure your teams aren't the ones that should be used to measure them. And on top of that, those are all lagging indicators anyways. Like, okay, I know what my velocity was in the last sprint. I could run an average and guess what it might be next sprint. But really, like, most teams are up and down, up and down, up and down. So how can you really know anyways? It's a really interesting thought to what Bill said on the leading, lagging, and how we translate that over to the business. Because if it doesn't make sense for development, how's it ever going to make sense for the business at all?
Yeah, I can't wait till the next Product Collective conference, and I really, that's something that we're all eager and really excited about. So I'll tease everybody with the fact that is probably going to be one of the next conversation topics coming soon. So the third thing, and especially over the last couple of years, right? This is, I think, the thing that we are all being challenged with in any industry, but especially the software industry, with multiples compressing, it being harder to raise capital, et cetera, a focus on quaint notions like EBITDA and profitability, right? Efficiency. And so, Andrew, we'll start with you on this one. Should efficiency even be an aspiration? Can it be measured? Is it a thing as it relates to software development? And how do you think about it in the context of Agile? 2-minute lightning round so that Bill can respond as well.
Yeah, so I think efficiency in development is contextual, meaning that most people try to over-optimize on the iron triangle and get all three, and so they get none of them. And so if you understand what you're trying to be efficient about, are you trying to be efficient about quality? Are you trying to be efficient about delivery? Are you trying to be efficient about cost? And then optimizing the way the team operates to that particular side of the triangle is how you should. But again, most organizations don't understand or want to make the compromise of what context am I being efficient for, and how do I structure my team, process, and delivery cadence around that efficiency goal.
Yeah, I love that efficiency's at the end. We've got to be efficient with our answers, right? I'll simply add to that. Don't look at efficiency as cutting stuff out. It doesn't always have to be what it means. Efficiency can be, take a look at the steps or a process like Agile. What are the things that are making it move left to right on the radio dial all the time? So much can be found in efficiency, and we use the words like waste, but really they're opportunity. Put the it's not even a spin. That's what it really is, folks. So how about taking a look at how you go from soup to nuts on this thing, and where there are things that it's not going linear. Sometimes you got to go back and pick something up. It wasn't enough detail, or it wasn't the right kind of solution. Where you're finding that's where the opportunity lies. There's some really nice gold in there, even at the more mature product levels. Sure, in startup land, it's all kind of fun, but even at the more mature product levels, there's opportunity to take a look at how efficiency can mean making it smoother to go left to right on the radio.
10-second lightning round. What's one change you've made in a development process that has demonstrably made the team more efficient? First Andrew, then Bill.
Everywhere I go, everyone, you're one person, you get one card. Until that product person and sit next to the customer success person to get it done, well, guess what you're doing? It's start less, finish more. And every single time you just see the velocity skyrocket because people actually start building empathy as a team, and they realize how the communication and everything else they're doing is, affecting the process around them.
Bill, 10 seconds.
Yeah, the book I never wrote, the 3-year plan. If you practice this as a product person, the first year you're building, the second year you're launching, and the third year you're scaling. Apply that to your career, and when you do that, you bring that passion back into the product, which is what it's all about.
I love it. If you would like, this is my obligatory commercial right at the very end. If you'd like an SDLC that's more aligned, predictable, and efficient, please come check us out at Bloomfilter. We would love to talk to you. You can also scan that QR code if you want to set up a meeting with us or use the button in the booth. Bill, Andrew, thank you guys so much. Certainly appreciate the thoughts. Hopefully everybody out there found this valuable. And with that, we'll return you to your regularly scheduled programming. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.